Hi everyone. Thank you to everyone who watched my first speaking video and my birth video. Thank you for all the beautiful comments that people have left. I really appreciate and I read every single one. And I really appreciate the questions that people have asked. It helps me to understand what people want to know and need to know. So keep on asking questions and I will get around to them. Also, sometimes people don't want to comment. They don't want to comment about their own personal situation. And in that case, you're always welcome to email me. Um, just go to my website, the link is down below. And yeah, I love hearing people's experiences, birth stories, or if they have questions because they are pregnant and they want to ask something personal, then go ahead and share with me that way as well. So thank you. Today's video is going to be about how I prepare myself for labor, or how I deal with being in labor, actually. So a lot of women and parents, fathers as well, but the questions I get are from people generally who are interested in having a natural labor. And so understanding the body and the physiology of the body and also the psychology of birth is really, really important. So I'm actually going to go back to 24 years ago when I was pregnant with my first daughter, because what I learned when I was, like I was pregnant and I just read as much as I could on the internet, on books, in books, and I'm not just a bit, a lot of a knowledge junkie, which I could literally spend all day just studying stuff. So yeah, but I wanted to understand the psychology of birth because I think that your mental mindset helps so much as a preparation when you go in, but also just understanding the physiology of birth, sort of knowing just some of the basics of what's going to be happening to your body. You're not going in blind. You also feel empowered because you're not relying on the medical personnel or whoever's supporting you to be telling you what's happening to your body. You have a pretty good overview already of birth. So I think it's really important to understand the 3 stages of birth, and I recommend studying that. So, which leads me to the first thing. One of the first things that I learned about birth was, labor, was what transition was. So transition is when a woman's having the contractions. That's her cervix dilating, and so we understand that generally. And I'm going to assume that you've got basic knowledge here, but so the contractions are happening to expand or dilate the cervix to 10 plus centimeters, and once it reaches 10 centimeters, then the contractions change to push the baby out. They're very different stages and they feel very different. The pain of the cervix dilating and the contractions that are causing that to happen, for me personally, that's the most intense pain, and it sort of increases in intensity. Once you get to the pushing stage, even though it still hurts and the contractions are happening, because it feels like you're doing something and you're bearing down, it's like a kind of powerful feeling. Like you really feel like you're like pushing the baby out. It kind of, the powerful feeling of pushing the baby kind of overrides the actual pains of the contractions. But there's a point between those 2 stages called transition. And this is when, and excuse me for any midwives or nurses, who are listening to this and probably going, she's not technically really, really correct, because it's been a very long time since I've read this kind of stuff. But I'm trying to just give you a generalized understanding. When the cervix is getting to 10 centimeters dilation, I don't even know what 10 centimeters is, and before the body switches to pushing, that's called transition. That is the stage where you have had enough, where as a woman you're going to feel like, I can't do this anymore, this is too hard, this is too painful, I want it to stop, and or you might want to ask for drugs. And so when I read that at that stage you're most likely to want to be asking for drugs, that helped me when I was in labor, because true to form, every time I got to transition, I'd be like, I'm exhausted. I can't do this anymore. I want this to stop. Can someone just cut the baby out of me? I want drugs. when I started to have those thoughts, I was able to then say, ah, I know I don't want drugs. I know that I don't want a cesarean. I know that I want to give birth naturally, but the fact that I'm having these thoughts must mean I'm in transition. And so that helped me understand where I was in the labor and to know that I was really, really, really close to the pushing stage. So just knowing where you are in your labor, because if you're in the hospital system, and this is a whole other topic about, how and whether they should check for dilation and how often they check your cervix and everything. But I'll quickly segue. When a woman can go from 0 dilation to 10 centimeter dilation in like 10 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour, 5 hours, 24 hours, there is no linear step by step for how long you go. So they could check you and say, oh, you're only 5 centimeters dilated. And you're like, oh, fuck, I've been in labor for 11 hours and I'm only 5 centimeters. That means I'm halfway. I'm going to be in labor for another 11 hours. No, you can go another 5 centimeters in half an hour, an hour. So checking for where you are in your dilation isn't really necessarily the best way to ascertain where a woman is in labor. For a woman to know in her own body when she gets to that point where she just feels like she's absolutely had enough and can't do it anymore, and to recognize that that's a sign that you're really, really close and that you're actually in transition, that's very empowering. So when I had those thoughts, I didn't even articulate them. And there's nothing wrong with articulating. I think it can be really healthy to, speak out loud. You just got to be cautious because you don't want to be telling people that's what you want if you don't really want it. But if your spouse is there or your birthing partner, tell them this. Like, say, if I ever say I want drugs, remind me that I'm probably in transition. So I found that incredibly helpful and it worked for me every single time. The other thing is that feeling of, I can't do this anymore. I literally feel like I'm going to die, or I'm too tired, or I just have no more energy. When you feel that, just to surrender to it, just to completely let yourself feel that fully, just to let go in it and just go, it's okay. It's okay that I feel like I can't, and give up. And I know that sounds kind of like counterintuitive, but you want to give up because it's in the surrender that final opening happens, that final dilation of the cervix happens, when you just completely let go with every part of you, with your body, with your mind, and you just completely surrender. And it's in that surrender that then you bridge and you move over transition. So that's number one. The second one was contractions and fear. So I remember reading, and it seemed rather obvious, but I was first time pregnant and it wasn't obvious to me, so I'm going to assume it's not obvious to everybody else, is that when you're in a fear response, your body contracts. It's usually goes into a fear, flight, or fight reaction when you're in fear. And so if you're in fear, it's tensing up because it's getting ready to do something. So all your muscles contract. If you're fearful about birth, or if you're fearful about pain, that's something that you need to work on, and you need to be very conscious that that's what's happening to your body, that your muscles are going to contract, because that is the opposite of what you want to happen in labor. In labor, you want your muscles to be relaxing and opening, because your whole body, your cervix, everything has to open to allow the baby out. So you want to, and this is why a lot of people do hypnobirthing, but just even mentally knowing that if I'm fearful of the pain, if I'm fearful of the outcome, or I'm fearful of what's happening to my body, that's actually making your body tense up, which is going to increase the pain of everything that's happening to you. So yeah, contractions hurt. You are going to get a lot of endorphins and hormones that your body will produce to help you counteract the pain. And you've got to trust that your body will produce these hormones. It's like being on a runner's high. athletes get these big rushes of endorphins and everything to help them, get through the pain of whatever marathon they're running. So the same thing happens for a woman in labour. You're going to be getting this beautiful cocktail of hormones and chemicals to help you actually cope with the labour and the pain. But if you're really, really, really fearful, then you're going to be contracting, and that's actually going to cause more pain because then your body has to work against the contraction, whereas you want to be relaxed and opening. So that's point number 2. The other one was when I was pregnant the first time, and then afterwards a movie came out called Orgasmic Birth. But I remember reading when I was pregnant the first time that some women have orgasms in birth, and that like blew my mind. Like that was just like, I'd never even heard of it. I couldn't conceive of it. That just was like so out there. Unfortunately, I've never experienced an orgasm in birth. My third birth was pretty much close to bliss. I wouldn't say it was orgasmic, and I'm definitely not going to say it didn't have any pain, but I reached a state of bliss that was really, really beautiful. But when I was pregnant with my first, I didn't necessarily think that I was going to have an orgasm in birth. But what I did realize was there's a whole spectrum. And on one end, there's possible orgasm, and on the other end, there's like excruciating pain that's unbearable. And so I kind of went, well, if there's a spectrum, where would I like to be on that spectrum? And I definitely thought the fact that there's even the potential of having an orgasm, I'm aiming for that end of the spectrum. And so I don't know, everyone's different. I can't say I've got a high pain threshold anyway. But yeah, I was like, it just opened my mind to the fact that birth doesn't have to be as painful as we've been told it is, or as we see, women screaming in movies and TV shows and, cursing everyone around them. I was just like, I can bear the pain, and it doesn't have to be that bad. And it might even be, towards the end of, absolutely beautiful. So that helped me. These things might just seem, and that was the third point, these things might just seem like not a big deal. Mindset is everything. I think that going in, having as much knowledge as you can, and hopefully you've got some knowledge about your body. You know your own body. You know how tapped you are tapped into your own inner knowing you are, your own intuition. You know how you manage pain. Like, these are things that you need to know about yourself so that you can utilize your own tools and resources. These are the things that have helped me. I hope they help anyone else going into labor. But when you're reading, anything that stands out to you as like, that really helps me to understand what's going to happen, or, that really speaks to me, trust that. Trust the parts that when you read or you hear knowledge that really speak to you, so that you can hold on to them. Because I promise you, when you're in labor and it gets really tough, like anything in life, when it gets really tough, there's going to be certain things that you want to grasp onto and hold on to, and use them as reminders to stay strong, keep going, you've got this, you're powerful. So they're the three things that helped me the most. And I can absolutely say that in every labor, those were my three things. There was another question, and I'm just going to read the question. It said, do you find you go to the place where you feel the most intensity and pain in order to get the work done? And I was like, yes. And yes, not just in labor, yes, in every aspect of life. I am an emotional therapist, so that's pretty much the work I do, or my own inner work. That's what I help people do, is to face the most painful parts of life. And so, yes, that applies in labor too. I can't remember which book it is. I think it might be in a May Gaskin's book, but they used to call contractions waves rather than calling them contractions. I don't think it ever caught on. I tried it for a while in one of my pregnancies, calling them waves, but I think we're sort of just used to calling them contractions. But I'm going to use the wave analogy for pain. and this applies to anything in life, but particularly in labor. Imagine when you're at the beach, and I'm sure we probably all had this experience of going to the beach and being caught by a really big wave and being tumbled by it. And if it was big enough and it went on long enough, it can be quite scary because you can't find your feet, you're being knocked down and you're being tumbled over and over and over again until you're swirling in sand and you can't see which way's up. And it can be quite scary and disconcerting. And yet most of us know that if you see a big wave coming towards you and you know that it's going to knock you off your feet, the best thing to do is to dive deep into it and go through and underneath it. That's the same in labor, and that's the same with contractions. And going back to, if you're in fear of it or if you're trying to resist something, you're going to contract, you're going to tense up, it's going to hurt that much more. When a contraction's happening in labor, if you go into it and just go, I'm going to go right into the depths of this and I'm going to feel it all, and relax your body at the same time and actually go deeper into it, welcome it, you'll find that it's going to be much easier. I'm not going to say it's necessarily going to be painless, yet there's a way, and I do believe this goes back to how we release the chemicals in our brain, that if you go right into the core of something, then your body knows that you trust it, and it's also going to then reward you with the equal amount of hormones and chemicals that your body needs to cope with that. And I can say that there's been many times in my life, and I'm speaking here about emotional pain as well, where I've met a pain that's been so emotionally intense that I've actually felt it as physical pain. I'm sure most of us can relate to that experience too, where when I've gone right into the core of it, I've just completely surrendered into it and gone, and I'm just I'm going to feel all of this. I'm just going to feel it and go right to its core. That right in the core, I've found bliss. I've found peace. I've found euphoria. I've found some kind of sense of calmness, the very thing. It's always like the antidote to the pain, the very thing that gives you strength. And so in labor, yes, welcome the pain of the contractions as much, again, as that's going to seem counterintuitive because we're kind of used to bracing ourselves against pain or protecting ourselves. Try and welcome it. Try and if calling it a wave instead of a contraction helps, that whatever, call it whatever you want. It's fine. You can make up your own silly names. Everybody's different. I tend to be quite serious person, especially around these things. In other areas of life, I'm lighthearted. But some people are really raucously funny, and some people like to make fun of everything and give things silly names. If that's you, go ahead, call the contraction some ridiculous name. If that's going to work for you. It's your labor. You get to do it how you want. I don't want to go off on tangents because I could get really carried away about how the medical system tries to fit us all into one box and have the same formula for everybody, as if every woman's body is exactly the same and every labor is the same and every child that comes out is the same. It's not. This is your labor. You get to do it how you want. Sing, dance, cry, make jokes, be silly, be serious, be introverted. For instance, I'm someone who goes, and to the point that the midwives in my first 2 births remarked upon it, I go so deeply internal that I'm quiet. I'm so quiet. I don't make any sounds because I'm so much in my own experience and going deeper and deeper and deeper inside me, that it would feel like was expending energy if I vocalized. Having said that, some women, they need to vocalize in birth. They need to move that energy and feel it moving, and they need to get it out. And there's something too, and I've studied Tantra a lot, and so you'll hear this around, women and having sex and orgasms and everything. But our throat and our mouth is related to our vagina. And so there's something about, if you do make noise or you feel the compulsion to make noise, don't be embarrassed. Go for it. Open up your throat, because when you open up your throat, you're actually opening up your vagina as well. So but be you, like just do you, and also, and if something happens in labor that's not you, like go with that as well. Like, I mean, I'm really, really, really quiet in labor. I don't feel the need to vocalize. I want to contain all my energy. But if a big lion roar came out of my body, I'd be like, oh, like that's what my body wants to do. Like I would trust that as well. So they're my tips. Was there anything else? Oh yeah, someone else if asked something if I've learned from one previous labour that helped me in another, but not really. Not for me personally. All four of my labours were very, very similar. The only thing that differed was length. So my first one was 24 hours with 2 hours of pushing. That 2 hours of pushing was exhausting. My second labour was 12 hours. My third labour was 6 hours. So each time it got half, so I thought the last one would be like really quick. I thought it was 3 hours. No, it went back up to 11 hours. I think some of that might have been because also where I was in the setting I was, I put myself in a really different setting context, obviously. But yes, in terms of the nature of my labours, they were all pretty much similar. I think my body works like my body just works the same. And bar any complications, I think that most women would find that most of their labours are the same unless there was something drastically different. The baby's position, a complication. But other than that, like, I mean, there's some women that, like, from woe to go, half an hour. It's like, I mean, I can't even conceive of that. So they don't know that the first time, but they do know that the second and third time, so they know that the second, they go into labour, like, to get wherever they need to be really, really quickly. So, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's all that I can say. Just those three things that helped me, that I learned when I was pregnant the first time, to recap, was understanding how you're going to experience transition. Just, go and do some research, read about transition. Well, no, read about the 3 stages of labour. The third stage is when the placenta's coming out. But understand transition, because that's probably the point where most women get stuck. And I didn't even actually talk about stuckness, but that's another symptom, is to feel stuck. So I talked about, wanting to give up, but you can also feel like I'm stuck. Nothing's happening. I can't, nothing's happening. It's not progressing. That's also a common feeling of transition. The spectrum between orgasmic birth and excruciating, unbearable pain. Try to go, well, where do I want to land on that? And understanding that there's amazing potential, and you can aim for that potential. And good luck for you if you have an orgasmic birth. And the other thing was, can't even remember now. Fear. Not to contract. To any time that you notice that you're having fearful thoughts, just to remind yourself that that's causing your body to tense up, and just to breathe and relax and let yourself know that there's nothing to be afraid of, and that you're doing beautifully. And I think that those 3 things, and whatever else that you come across in your own research, because I highly recommend researching as much as you can in preparation for giving birth, whatever else resonates and speaks to you. All right, thanks, bye.